Hi, I'm Fiona Allman-Treen, and I'll be appearing with Prosper on the Online Prosperity Show to tell you all about the next big things that are happening in websites, AI, and digital, including sharing some of my horror stories from the very early days in this industry. I look forward to seeing you there.
And welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your ultimate destination for entrepreneurs, business owners, and dreamers seeking to thrive in the digital age. Now, I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have a special treat for you. Now, Fiona, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you, Prosper. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. You see, when we were looking for people to come on the show, I actually thought we were going to get Shrek's Fiona on here, but I think the budget did not allow for this because I did Google and yeah, was I correct though?
Absolutely, yeah. Because my company name is Fat Promotions. If you Google Fat Fiona, I do come up. Me and the chick from Shrek. So yeah.
So you can only imagine this is what we can do on short notice. But alas, I'm excited for this because for our audience, a lot of us get stuck on the online space. And one of the very things that should be used as a tool to promote us is our website. And for some weird reason, a lot of people usually make that an afterthought. So just imagine somebody who can transform your website from a static brochure to a dynamic lead generating powerhouse. And that's our guest today, the real Fiona Allman-Treen, not a fat Fiona, the founder of Fat Promotions Limited, company that's renowned for treating and creating strategic websites and bespoke online systems that actually empower businesses and charities to achieve scalable growth. Now, Fiona is not only tinkering with pixels and indexes behind websites there, she's also the author of the best-selling book, Website Mastery, for business owners who do not speak tech, where she demystifies the complexities of web development for non-technical business owners. Now, if there's a fun fact about her, when she's not revolutionizing the digital landscape, she actually leads a community music group that brings people aged 18 to 98, and they play music from every decade. I mean, she's known to play AC/DC and all the other favorite tunes on her ukulele. So I can't wait to one day sit down and be serenaded by some of the music that she gets to play. So in this episode, we're not going to get musical or we're not going to go into the swamps, but we're going to dive into Fiona's journey from graphic design to web development. And also we're going to be exploring her innovative approaches to website strategy and also look at the lessons that she has learned along the way. So I encourage you to grab your favorite beverage. Mine will be a whiskey, but obviously for reasons best known to everyone, I won't be indulging in that at this particular moment, but who knows? And I can't wait to jump into this with Fiona, because websites are really pivotal in the way that we run our business. Now, Fiona, I could go on and talk about things I'm not even qualified to even talk about. Now, your career started off in graphic design. Tell us a little bit about your sort of first days in that industry, because you've worked with big names like Virgin and the Toussaint's group, right?
Yeah, we did. And it is funny because when I speak now to anybody under 40, they don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about how graphic design used to be all done manually. You know, this makes me sound like 110, but we were working without computers. So graphic design was all done by hand with these specialized little pens and instruments and stuff like that, and then stuck together and carried carefully to the printers. This artwork, none of it was on computers. Computers were just started to come in. This was in the sort of late 80s when Apple Macs came out, when the whole desktop publishing boom happened. And I remember we had an Apple Mac in that office, and the only thing we used it for was to type up the invoices that got mailed out to the customers. So it's crazy how much in the time that I've been working in this industry, how it has massively changed, really has. And that's only getting faster. That rate of change is accelerating now like a snowball down a mountain.
Absolutely. And obviously, now that you speak about it, with the advent of programs like Canva, where you just literally look at your computer and automatically things come together, how did people copy and paste?
Yeah, honestly, it was insane. We had all this crazy equipment. If I explained it to you, you would think I was actually like a Stone Age person right now. You would not believe how archaic it was. And I just remember when we started using like computers, we had programs like Quark Express, and Adobe was out. Adobe was still a forerunner and still is today in that tech sphere. So it was really interesting because what I saw was it was a leveler. The technology was a real leveler for people in the industry like myself, who had a million great ideas but can't draw for toffee. I can't draw. I'm a terrible drawer. So I'd have great ideas, but I couldn't get them across to clients. Oh, it'll look like this. And they'd look at my scribbles and they'd be like, yeah, we don't know what that is. We have no clue what that is meant to be. So having that technology that could then visualize what I was thinking was revolutionary at the time. And that whole desktop publishing revolution was then repeated in concept, but obviously massively different when it then became internet. And I can still remember seeing my first website. Somebody said to me, come and look at this on my computer, one of my colleagues, come and look at this on my computer. And it was actually for a band. Who was that? Oh my gosh, it was a band called Placebo. I don't even know if they still exist or anybody remembers them, but it was a website for a band. And when you moved the cursor over the picture of the lead singer, he animated. And this was like mind blowing at the time. There was nothing like this anywhere. And I remember going to my boss the next day and saying, we've got to get on this. This is like the next thing. And he said to me, I think it's a passing phase, which he is now a client of my business. We've now built websites for 4 of his companies. And every time I see him, I'm sure deep down he loves it, but I like to remind him that this was a passing phase. And he's like, oh my gosh, will you let that go now? Stop reminding me that I said that. It's so embarrassing. But yeah, it was mind blowing to see that and to see that transformation. And of course, now we're seeing that again with AI. It's just the next level.
I was actually queuing up a passing phase question, which we will definitely jump into the AI side of things there. And thank you so much for obviously opening those files. I'm still coughing from all the dust that you.
Yeah, honestly, it's crazy. You can't even imagine it. You can't even imagine now what it was like. It's crazy.
Great stuff. But obviously this would have been a very specialized type of field to be in. And I also would like to think that it wasn't easy to get into it. First of all, how did you find yourself in graphic design, and what sort of inspiration had you gotten on your way up?
Well, in graphic design, it was actually, as I believe many good careers still start, was the inspiration from a teacher at school. I had a teacher who said to me, and he literally said, you've got great ideas, but you really have to learn to draw. And that was my art teacher. He was such a nice man. And he said to me, if you can just get the images across, if you can just learn to draw, but bless him, I think he realized, I think his words actually, as I remember, were, you can't make a silk purse from a sow's ear. Which was a not very pleasant way of saying you just can't draw. So yeah, I got into the graphic design side more because I had the ideas, and people thankfully could see that, employers could see that, and banging on enough doors, lugging around my big portfolio, the physical portfolio under my arm, and banging on doors and saying, give me a job, give me a job, until somebody just got fed up with me banging on their door and said, okay, you can have a job. But when I got into the internet side of things, that was where the boom was coming, was kind of the later 90s. And there was a real boom going on at the time. And a lot of traditional design agencies were trying to get into that. But their designers were used to designing for print. And it's hard to imagine it unless you were there. But designing for print, if you think in a magazine or a newspaper, you read in columns. Right. But of course, on a website, you can't flow text from the bottom of one column to the top of the next. It has to go left to right. So it's learning a completely different language. So even without learning to code, the designers needed to think in a different way. So I was brought into a number of design agencies to set up their web department because they all wanted to cash in, horrible term. They all wanted to cash in on this web boom. So I was going into different agencies and helping them set up their web department. And it was really not very integrous at the time from a lot of these agencies because they just wanted to cash in and they were forcing their designers to learn this new way of thinking. And it was a really tumultuous time. But if you think of a snow globe where all the bits are in the air, all the bits are floating around in there, it was kind of like that. But once it settled, it started to become, people started to see the value of it and actually started seeing that, maybe this website idea was the way to go and not such a passing phase.
Absolutely. I quite like that because, if you really, go back a little bit in history, we had a period where they called it the Y2K period. That's the year
absolutely.
2000, when almost everything, even your pens, were deemed to not work after the year 2000. Yeah. I don't know what was going on then. So the period you're talking about is the .com era, where people were now doing that mad rush to, secure their stake in the internet and grow their business like that. Now, for a lot of people that maybe just wake up and Wi-Fi is everywhere, you guys literally had to design the internet because, like you said, you put some of the first websites on there. What was it like, coming back home from work and you don't have a computer for you to keep practicing on?
Oh, I was one of the first people to buy a computer. I remember buying one. Oh my gosh, when I look at it now, it was like £1,000, which I don't know what that is in your dollars, but it was a hell of a lot of money here. And it had, if I look at it now, seriously, my phone has more power than that now. And this was this massive computer with a screen that was like as big as my car. It was just, the monitor was just huge, not in terms of display size, but the depth of the thing, because it was a cathode ray tube. They were so old, it was insane. But yeah, it was very strange. And I think where I became disillusioned with working for other people, where the spur came to start my own business, was I was being guided, shall we say, I don't want to be too critical because everyone teaches you something, but by the people who employed me to sell the website whether they need it or not. Right. And that's where I struggled with it, because yes, I could see the power of a website, but at that time not everybody needed to be investing the telephone number size figures in a website that wasn't going to do anything for them. I mean, if I can share, there was one client I was sent to see who ran a cleaning company, and he said to me, "Okay, I've met you and I trust you, and I've got this quote from your boss for this like multiple high four figures to do a 4-page website," which at the time they were so static, they were so basic. It was virtually done in crayon, and he said, "Is it worth me investing in this?" And I knew what I was meant to say, but I couldn't say it because I was like, firstly, I've never known a poor cleaner. Cleaners everybody always needs a cleaner. There was always work for a cleaner, whether you're a good or bad one. But I said, like, you know what? No, for that money, you could get the front page of the local newspaper every week for like a year and then come back and spend the money on the website. But right now, you don't need to do that. And I still have those values today. I can't sell people the bells and whistles that they've been told they need, or they went on a course and it said they need. Because if you don't need it, you don't need it. At the end of the day, it's like anything in business. If you're good at what you do, you just need to speak about that. It's not about having what the other guys have.
Absolutely. And I quite like that. You know why? Because so many people end up with all these tools and systems and processes which don't even speak to each other and are not even aligned to the journey that they're supposed to be on. Yet they're paying a subscription on it, and it's just eating into the profit and things of that nature. So obviously, there's values misalignment. This is when you then decided you were going to go ahead and get started on your own. What was it like when you decided, right, this is how I'm going to do this?
Terrifying, liberating, exciting. The fear, I think, of losing that regular paycheck is obviously a big one. I was very blessed that I had 100% support from my husband, who just said, no, do it, quit now, I'll meet you at home for lunch. That's exactly what he sent me on a text. And I was just like, yeah, okay. And I sat down the next day in my spare room and turned to the cat and said, this is it, Harry, we're in business. And 24 years later, Harry's gone, sadly, but the business is still here. So I've never regretted it. I'm not saying it's been easy all the way, but I've never regretted it, because I've always had that, I'm going to do this with integrity. And to the point where I actually had one client from a previous, who'd been with a previous employer of mine, came to me and said, well, I owe them money, but I don't want to deal with them anymore, so I'm coming to you. And I said, no, you need to clear that debt. Yeah. If you owe them that money, you need to do that. Because firstly, if you do it to them, you'll do it to me. And secondly, I don't want to work with people who don't have honor. This is about doing a good job for a good price, but it's not about ripping anybody off or doing anything that just makes my skin crawl. So yeah, and he did, and he paid his bill, and then he came to me, and it was really nice. We had a great relationship. He was a client for over 10 years, I think, till he sold his business. So it worked out well.
I quite like that, and it's a good thing. It just makes your skin crawl, not make it turn green, because then that will be a story for another day. But the name of the business, Fat Promotions.
Yes. That was based around my initial spell fat. So I found it funny. I have had a couple of people over the years who didn't like it. But when I say it's my initials, and then I usually follow up with, think of the fun I have naming my children. Peter Robert will never forgive me. So it's one of these. There's all sorts of possibilities. And as well, I won't deny, I use the word promotions rather than web design, because then I thought that gives me scope to expand into other forms of promotions and stuff if this doesn't work out. And of course it worked out. So now I'm just stuck with promotions for no reason, because all we do is websites, nothing but websites.
Absolutely. And you also have a community music, thing that you do. So you could still be promoting that as well. That's all I've been hearing ever since we started working on here. So it's all about promotions and promotions and promotion. But when you start your business, obviously there's things that you got to learn. There's obviously things that you also have to unlearn, and stuff like that. Now, were there any other people that would have come in the picture that at least didn't tell you that it was a passing phase?
Well, I've always worked with business coaches. I've always worked with a coach, usually for a couple of years at a time, because I found that after a couple of years, they'd kind of, in the nicest way, run out of ideas. And they just start saying to me, oh, you should write a book. You should write a book. And they all kept saying the same thing, you should write a book. And I'm like, no, because I thought that was a book about me, a book about, my story, or a novel or something god awful that nobody would want to read. And it's only when I started working with a business coach in 2019, and she said, you should write a book. And it was like the first thing she said. And I was like, ooh. Mostly business coaches I work with take a couple of years to run out of ideas and get to that point. And she said, no, not about you, because it's not about you. It's about the people you serve. And that's everything I've heard from you is all about helping the people, giving the people the right thing, giving them what they actually need, not what they think they want, not what they've been told they should pay for and stuff like that. And she said, and that's what needs to come across in your book. And that's why I wrote my website mastery for business owners who don't speak tech, because that is literally like 240 pages or whatever it is of everything that I've learned. These are the essential ingredients you actually need to make a website work. But it's not coding. I have to say, there's no code. It's the no code guide. There is no coding in it, but it helps you get a really clear idea. And even if people just even if they take it to another agency, they can take it to another agency and say, I've done this, I've done everything in this book. So these are the pictures that I want. This is the tone of voice that I want. This is the target audience I'm trying to reach. These are the colors and styles and fonts that I believe appeal to them. It just gets them to think about a really clear picture of what they want, because too many times I've heard clients say, I paid a fortune for a website and it didn't do what I wanted. And I say, what did you want it to do? And they'll say, well, just, generally help my business. And I'm like, then you got general results. We need to be laser focused, especially now in this day and age where you used to have 8 seconds to catch somebody's attention on a website. Literally 8 seconds. That's like dog years now. That's like a lifetime in web terms. Now you've not even got 30 seconds. You probably not even got 3 seconds. Where your content is so short, TikTok and short YouTube shorts, reels on Insta, all of this, you've got a millisecond to get their attention, or that thumb's going to scroll you straight past.
Now, Fiona, I'd have to tell you something here. I mean, you've thrown in your husband in here. I'm going to tell you about my wife. Now, my wife is what we call a civilian, okay? And she loves TikTok, and I don't subscribe to that, even though I'm in digital marketing and things like that. But half of the time when she's sitting down, I just maybe sit next to her and I observe how she interacts with her phone and things like that. Not that I'm spying on her or anything, but the speed at which she goes through the TikTok reel, okay, and stops for something that she wants to see because she noticed something in the corner. And I was like, can you imagine how long it took for somebody to create that reel? Maybe days and days to just come up with a 3-second clip, and somebody just goes like that, and she looks what she wants in that. And I was like, wow, we really have to do something different, especially when it comes to wanting to create for and relate to our audiences. Now, your book, like you say, makes like website development accessible for people that don't speak tech at all. What are some of the misconceptions that people that don't speak tech come across, especially when it comes to websites, and how are you addressing them in this book?
Well, the interesting thing is, it's great that you mentioned the TikTok thing, because I read this scientific study. Said I was a nerd. I read this scientific study, and it said our peripheral vision is lessening. In younger generations, our peripheral vision is lessening because we're so used to focusing on little screens. But what we are seeing on those screens, we're scanning it faster. And that's why people can zoom through these things. And that is now translating into websites. So the biggest thing I see is people say, I want full screen. And we still get clients saying, I want my navigation down one of the sides. No, you don't. You want your navigation at the top, in the middle. Everything needs to be tunnel vision. It's really interesting. So that's one thing, is people saying, oh, I want lovely, I've got a big wide screen, I want it on that. And I'm like, over 90% of searches in the UK are on your phone.
Oh, wow.
They're done on the phone. So you want to be in that little peripheral, get out of that peripheral vision, get into that laser focus. And my particular favorite as well is when they're writing their copy, like their banner at the top and stuff like this, should be obvious ones now. Like, you don't say, welcome to our site, welcome to Fred Smith Company. Nobody cares. But don't, and this sounds odd, when people say, we do this, we do that, we offer this service, we produce these results, I say to people now, you're weeing all over people. That's a whole other website. Nobody wants that. Don't we? It's not about you. If I don't come to your website and in that millisecond, that first banner says, you're struggling with this, and people say it's a pain point, and I don't like the idea of pushing a pain point, saying, don't you feel horrible because your business is failing? You don't want that. But wouldn't business growth be great? Or would you like more business growth? Or is your business growing fast enough? Anything that gets people to answer yes or no, That's what it's got to be. Your headline's got to be something that I can read and think, yeah or no. And if it's no, I'm going to scroll by. And that's fine. You just have to lovingly release me back into the universe. Don't worry about it. Don't say, but why do people click off? Because they're not your people. If you want engagement on your website, it's going to be straight away. I look at it and I think, yes. So it doesn't have to be a question, can be a statement, but it's something I look at and think, yes. So with mine, it might say things like, we say websites and online systems to take you to the next level. So if I'm thinking, oh yeah, I want the next level, yes. So I'm going to keep scrolling. I'm going to keep reading. But if I see something that I think no, if I think no, I don't really want next level, or startups. See, we don't work with startups. So there's nothing on our website about startups or getting started or starting out in the word start is nowhere on there because we don't work with them. And subconsciously, that means it's not resonating with those people. And so they just bounce straight out. And that's fine. Don't fear. It's like somebody said to me years ago, don't fear a big tax bill. It means you've had a good year in business. I would say in websites, don't fear a high bounce rate because it just means you're getting rid of people who aren't resonating with your message. If you've got 100% bounce rate, then your message needs working on.
I love that. And in the non-techiest of ways, what I'm getting from you is have a conversation with whoever has shown up on your website, right? Instead of
yeah, your website is 50% of the conversation you're having with a client you haven't met yet. So if you think if I was in there with them, we used to talk about the elevator pitch. You get into an elevator with somebody who's a perfect client, and by the 5th floor, they've got to know what you do and all that sort of thing. Your website is now your elevator pitch. It can go into more detail. It should go into more detail because the search engines love it. The search engines want you to be wordy. The people who are looking at it don't. They want you to get straight to the point. I don't have time. Tell me now. Is this for me? Yes or no? So I would say to everybody, read the first headline or the first heading on your website. If I can't think yes or no, that's for me, then it needs reworking.
Now, if we're going to be talking in that sort of frame of, really initiating that sort of conversation and getting your customer to self-select, like you've said, if they're startup, then if they don't see the language that is spoken in their break room, they're not going to stick around on your website and things like that. Exactly. How do you feel about stock photos or stock images and things that people then put on their website?
I think there's been a place for it over the years. I think some people have overused it. I do find it amusing when sometimes I see websites and I think, oh my gosh, I remember we used to use that 10 years ago. So I think that we don't realize how quickly the stock ages as well. That's something to be aware of. We're not using stock imagery very much at all now because we're using AI generated images.
Right.
Particularly with the recent advances in GPT, where you can be using GPT to create a framework and headline, and then it say, would you like some image suggestions to go with this? And then it makes the images as well. So it's, that's really moved it all. So it's like having a one-stop shop kind of thing. But stock images, they're still, if you've got something specific, they're useful. We're doing a website at the moment for a medical and tech. They're in science, technology, engineering, and medical. And that's really interesting, but they need very specific images and trying to get them to describe those enough that we can get an accurate image out of AI at the moment. It's not the AI that's not managing it. I'll just leave that there. But it's getting that description. So we're using stock images for them in some of the close-up of medical equipment, petri dishes, that kind of thing. But yeah, we're mostly using AI now. I would say stock libraries have been a bit too slow to come to the table with catching up with AI. And some of the early, I say early, I mean, I'm talking last year, 2024, AI creations by Adobe were shocking. They were so bad.
Yeah, I saw some that had maybe 3 fingers and it's like trying to wave at you and, exactly. But it's, I think it was I've forgotten his name, the guy from LinkedIn. He says, if your first iteration does not make you laugh or embarrassed, then you haven't
Yeah,
innovated enough. So it has
exactly.
come a long way. But like you say, it was only last year when it all changed up and things of that nature. Now, so many things happen when people start the journey to a website, and
Mm,
half of the time, like you were saying, they wanted to feel as if it's them, but they've got to be speaking to their audience and
mm,
things of that nature. And so many websites that I end up coming across, it's just maybe it becomes overly them, and you have
yeah.
explained that stop weeing all over your clients. What are some of the things that people should maybe be on the lookout for, especially when it comes to website creation, just
Mhm.
by looking at it, and then they can tell themselves whether they've hit the mark or not?
I think the thing is, I heard this great explanation by Daniel Priestley. He's an author who I really love. I think he's Australian,
Yeah.
and he said we're in a trust recession right now.
Mm.
We've had 5 years of chaos and not knowing, are we in, are we out? Where are we? What are we doing? And what's going to happen next? And da da da. And it's all, everyone's a bit jangly. And I always say to my clients, imagine you are sitting down at a table, just you and the one perfect client you've been looking for is sitting opposite you, and there's no challenge, there's no, well, sell to me or anything like that. It's just literally, if that they've got that problem that's keeping them awake at 3 a.m. and you've got the solution, how would you express that to them? And you wouldn't sit there and go, right, Prosper, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do, because you just wouldn't listen to any of it. But if I said, Prosper, you know what? I really feel you. I get what you're saying, that your problem at the moment that's keeping you up at 3 a.m. is that you are worried about business growth. You want more visitors, you want more visibility. So, what I'm going to do is share with you some of the examples of how we've helped other people. So rather than me saying what you should do is this, don't should on people either. I don't like being should
It's
on.
all over the
So
place.
yeah, exactly. So share some examples. So that can be, yes, it can be case studies. It can be your portfolio. If you do anything visual, as we do, we have a portfolio. Your blog. Your blog isn't just go and do this, go and do that. That's a mistake people make in their blog. But tying that in to something that, here's something that we had a situation like this, and this is how it worked for that client in your industry. Make it relevant, make it relatable, and then reflect that in the stuff outside your website. We've talked about social media, your TikToks and your LinkedIn posts and all of this kind of thing that you can put, everybody can put out there. Have all of those, think of them as little feeders that are coming into your website, because you really want people, yes, you can technically secure clients from social media alone, but it does take longer. Whereas if you can get them from social media with a message that resonates with them, that says, you're looking for more visibility, come and have a look at this blog on my website that says all about how you can increase your visibility without having to 10x. I keep hearing about 10x. You got to 10x the content you put out there. You can say the same thing to me 10 times. If I'm not interested, I'm not listening to the 9. I stopped at the first one. So, put your content out there that draws people to your website, gives an example, and then that's naturally going to make you go, okay, well, yeah, I'd like to know more about that. So imagine you're sitting across the table from your dream client. What would you say to them? What would you show them? How would you not convince them, but how would you convey the value that you really offer? Because at the end of the day, that undercurrent, that baseline of everything you do has to be, I want to help and I can. So let me. That's what it needs to be. I want to help. Keep that in mind. We have, one of our core values is stay in service. Always, we remember that we're serving our client. It's not about what we think looks better or what we think would be great for you. We're going to advise you that, but at the end of the day, it's what that client really wants, what they really need to see, so they can start to feel confident and they're going to see more results. So that's really what it comes down to, is make it all about them.
I like that whole stay in service
Mm,
aspect. I mean, you've taken that ever since when you wouldn't sell a website to that cleaning
yeah,
business, and
yeah.
obviously that still rings true to the person and what it is that you're doing. Now, for those that might be a little bit tech savvy enough to know where to click on the internet, where can they find you if they're going to be looking for maybe somebody that can help with their website and things of that nature?
Awesome. Not hard to find. Look for Fat Promotions. We are at fatpromotions.co.uk and .com. You can find us on TikTok at Fat Promotions, YouTube at Fat Promotions, Facebook at Fat Promotions, X at Fat Promotions, Insta at Fat Promotions. Thankfully, I did pick a name that nobody else had. So I'm not Fat Promotions 562. It's just Fat Promotions all over the website. And I will be more than happy to do like a live review with anybody with their website. If they want me to have a look, absolutely, totally no obligation, totally no charge. I just really like to help people. And the nice thing is, if I can't help you, I will tell you. I did that just yesterday. I was dealing with this lady. She has a really lovely website. And I said to her, you know what? There's nothing I would change on this website. She said, but I'm not getting results. And I said, I can't see why. I really cannot see why. And she said, well, it's only been up like a couple of weeks. I'm like, okay, that's why. It's going to take dry some time. At least. But yeah, so I've said to her, if you don't have results in 6 months, you'll come back and find me. I will be happy to help.
I can imagine. I'll definitely make sure that all those links and channels are available so that people can click on them there.
Thank you.
Fiona, when we started, you presented to us, a time in the medieval ages where you guys had to literally walk around with a wheelbarrow full of pictures to the printing house.
You didn't have wheels? My God.
So was it all carrying it with, or was it painting it on the walls in hieroglyphics?
I was going to say, cave paintings with my fingers. Yeah.
And you'd invite everybody else and say, look at what I drew. But you've been through so many different changes, from the Y2K, the .com. There was also the NFT bit, the Bitcoin era, the e-commerce boom, and the recent, but not so recent anymore in different places, the COVID pandemic, which literally had to obviously change and got you to reskin the way you showed up in your space. Did that affect maybe the way you were doing work or the way you deliver websites to the people?
Oh yeah, it's massively transformational. It was, and you know what? It sounds awful because it's a terrible, terrible time, but there were good things that came out of it. And I think a lot of the changes that we saw, the physicality of being in an office. I mentioned I started my business in my spare bedroom sitting at home. I'm back in my spare bedroom sitting at home, so I've gone full circle. But we had a really great team who were in the office, and we were lucky because we had a client who was in Spain, and she actually rang me. She was a really nice client, and she rang me about 3 weeks before we had the first lockdown in 2020 in the UK. And she rang me and she said, this is coming to you. She said, we have martial law here. We have soldiers on the streets with guns telling people to stay at home. She said, if you can get out of your office now and get ahead of this, you should. And there was something about that I could hear it in her voice, that this wasn't scaremongering. This wasn't Chicken Little, the sky is falling kind of fear, panic. It was genuine. So I said to my team a week before we had the lockdowns in the UK, I said, right, we're going to go cloud-based. All of our software is going to be cloud-based. We're going to go remote working. And we sat as a team and we mapped out, this is how we can communicate. These are the software programs we're going to need. This is how we're going to do it all. And we all decamped to working from home. Well, in the UK, they kept trying to bring us back. It was far too early. They kept doing this, like, come back to work, go home, come back to work, go home. So we waited about 6 months, I think, to make sure it had settled. And they were now saying, right, you can come back to the office. And I spoke with my team and they said, we don't want to. We really like it. I'm sure this says something about my management style, Prosper, but I'm just going to skip over that.
I'm not here to judge, but,
But they didn't want to come back to the office. They just didn't. And in the UK, still 5 years later, it's a big problem for some businesses who insist that their people have to be in the office. And this was one of the biggest learning points for me. Was for years, I had really good developers, designers, programmers, coders coming to me for work. And I would say to them, you have to come and physically sit in my office. And they would say, but I can do this from home. I can do it remotely. And I was like, no, you have to be in the office. And now I realize I have missed so many opportunities and so many good people because it turns out, who knew? We didn't have to be in the office at all. So now we're all agile working is how we put it here. We're agile working. We work from home. Sometimes I work from my camper van. Sometimes some of my guys work from a co-working space. But that's been the biggest shift is now we are office free. No office required.
Has that done anything to the obviously creativity amongst people? Because some people really can cross-pollinate ideas from others, and especially when it comes to that whole copy and paste type, synergy that happens, or osmosis that happens when people are working together.
Yeah, I think the designers struggled the most because they like that kind of that back and forth and collaboration and stuff like that. But to be honest with you, in my experience, programmers, if you bring them in an office, they're going to sit in a row with their earbuds in and they're going to sit there on there and they don't talk to each other anyway. They're talking to each other on screen. They're in the same room, but they're talking to each other on Slack or instant messaging or Windows messaging or whatever they were using at the time. And it's literally, that's how they communicate. And they are more comfortable with it. And I've got to say, touch wood, as I say this, I can honestly say my team are way more productive working from home than they ever were in an office. For the most part, they're happier. I do have a couple of people who struggled with it. I struggle with it because I'm a very sociable person. And, it's some days it was a bit weird when we were allowed to go back out to be in a room with people I wasn't related to. It was kind of weird. It was quite odd. But I really like the social aspect. So I struggled with the isolation. And a couple of my designers have had the same issue. One in particular is really struggling now because still working from home, alone, isolated. And we're looking now at things like co-working spaces or hot desk spaces or days where we meet up and work physically together, anything like that to try and break that. But it is something you can, like any habit, if you're doing something regular, a routine becomes a habit and then becomes a way of life. And then you start to realize what you're missing. So yeah, there's been two sides to it, but generally speaking, it's been great for my business.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, if you can work remotely now, you've got access to a wide range of talent that you can put together and really make the the business stronger and more productive and things of that nature. Now, Fiona, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. I mean, your life story and your experience and the work that you're doing and helping others out there is really, really remarkable. And, so many people just come into these sort of industries just because it's a shiny object at that particular time. And when the next thing comes up, like I know so many people that were different designations in the last 5 years are now showing up as AI experts. And I'm like, like, when did you learn this? Maybe overnight while I was sleeping. I'm not sure because I didn't see that transformation. But how are you seeing AI interacting with the work that you're doing? And is this a passing phase?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. My mother-in-law is terrified of AI, and she said to me the other day, well, it just has to be stopped. And I'm like, it's just not going to happen. That's like saying language is going to stop. Because all this is, you can see it as a platform, as a language, as a piece of software, but really this is a culture shift that we're seeing now. And I think the important thing is something that I went to a AI conference in Paris in 2022, I believe, the end of 2022, purely because it was in Paris. I didn't really know anything about AI at the time. Why wouldn't you? But then the guy said there, he said, you won't be replaced by AI, but you will be replaced by the person who knows how to use it. And I thought, that's interesting, because that's not just as an individual, that's as a company. So now we're using AI to generate like the starting points of the coding. and then my guys pick it up and run with it from there. And we're using AI, as I mentioned, for image generation, for copywriting, for social media, for our own social media content, that you obviously now can train it in your voice. That's very convincing. I'm really glad I published my book before the boom in early 23, because so many people say to me now, was it written with AI? And I say, hand on heart, no, but the next one will be. Because if I can teach you to talk like me, and I can say, these are my ideas, you do the hard work and I'll do that 20% at the end, then that's worth doing, because it makes your business leaner and more efficient. And that's what we're having to do. We used to say to people 16, 18 weeks to turn around a website. Now we're saying 2 weeks, because of that speed, that AI. And I can honestly say, when I speak, I feel bad saying this, and it might be a little controversial, but when I get people, I'm in a lot of networks for business networking. And when I get people say, oh, I want to talk to you, I'm a copywriter, I say to them, you know what, if you want to talk about the weather, let's meet and have a coffee. I'm fine with that. But if you want to talk to me about copywriting, forget it. You need to go find another job. I really do think that. I really do.
And I'm going to say this with utmost love and respect, Fiona. I laugh when I see those what do you call them? The M Kardashian posts, trying to call out to say, I'm seeing you written the M dash, and you know what I mean? And I'm like, wait a minute, you read it and you saw it and it has inspired you to be angry about this. So my question now is my message audible enough, or are you just projecting your fears? Because this really is questioning your existence and things of that nature. So I'm happy we are on that sort of same trajectory, because so many
There's
people.
Going to be big shifts. This is the thing. I tell you who said it really well. Actually, it was Tony Robbins said at a conference last year. He said, if you look at the economy in America, he said 150 years ago, it was like 90% agricultural. 90% of the economy contribution was agricultural. He said now it's less than 3%. And he said, does that mean all those people who are farmers, they all expired, they all passed away, they all, just disintegrated into dust? No, they went and found other jobs. And I saw this when I grew up in the UK. I grew up in the northeast of England, where it was shipbuilding and it was coal mining. They were the two massive industries in the northeast. I didn't fancy doing either of those, obviously. But, does that mean that nobody in the northeast of England has a job anymore? No, you just have to adapt. But the people who stand at the back, and like my parents ran pubs when I was a kid, and my dad used to get these guys used to come and lean on the bar, like, really depressed, with their pint that oddly they could still afford, even though they were saying they had no work. And they would say, but I'm a shipbuilder. I'm a shipbuilder. And my dad would say, but there's this job in the paper for a carpenter, and it says they'll train you. They'll give you all the training. And they go, no, I'm a shipbuilder. Those are the guys who stayed out of work. And that's what's happening now. If I get, copywriters say, no, I'm still a copywriter, stock libraries, I mentioned, stock photo libraries, give them a year, they'll be gone. It's going to be AI. And you know what? All you can do is learn to use it. So you can say, yes, I'm still a copywriter, but instead of charging $400 to write your website, I can charge you $300 because I write it with GPT and then I make it better. So, that's, you've got to get on board, really.
Absolutely. It's like people that were creators of those horse carriages, and then they didn't want didn't want the car to come around. And if you see me writing with my chat GPT and you start pointing fingers at me. But Fiona, I'm really excited about what we've created here today. I mean, there's so much that can be spoken about, and I really thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey, especially taking us back to where it all started to what it is that you're now doing. And I will make sure that all those links that you've shared with us are going to be in the show notes there, so that people can actually get started on their web design journey with you.
Fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, Prosper. I've loved it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching right now, if today's conversation resonated with you, please don't keep it to yourself. You might have a friend who's just, created their website, maybe not exactly by themselves, or they've just really paid a fortune and they don't quite see what that website is supposed to do. Fiona has offered an audit that she is more than happy to obviously help them out with. And if somebody has shared this episode with you, definitely don't just put it on save mode or whatever it is that you do with content that has been shared to you. Please take action. People like Fiona are there to help you, and they've been there through and through. And yeah, I can't thank you enough for tuning into the Online Prosperity Show. Check out the links that are in the show notes below, and also be sure to check out Fiona's best-selling book, the website Mastery for Business Owners Who Do Not Speak Tech. Until next time, stay prosperous. Bye for now.